farm. So it's been years since I have made a longbow. And that's what this is. This is a longbow. It is 6 foot tall. As you can tell, it's quite the beast. It's made out of hickory, and it's made out of lumber hickory. I made it out of this. Just a nice, straight-grained piece of sapwood hickory. Sapwood being the outer part of the tree. And essentially this was here as a part of the tree at one point. I went to Fleetwood Lumber. I picked up a couple of these boards. I think I got 18 board feet out of it. And I am setting up an archery range. I have not been into the archery scene for a very long time, but just like everything I do, I'm pretty good at it. I'm not going to toot my own horn. I'm not going to do that.
Where's the goats?
The goats are already in.
Oh. Okay.
But I've been doing I did the bow and arrow thing for probably 15 years. And I got out of the bow and arrow industry a while back because of an injury, and now I'm ready to try and string this for the first time. It's just a piece of wood. It's a piece of hickory. I made strings out of baling twine, and I'm ready to test myself. Now here's the thing. I only cut measurements on this. This just has measurements. This is just a standard longbow. I haven't shaped or made the arrow rest or the handle or anything like that, because if it blows up on me, then I'm in trouble. So all I've got is a tapered piece of wood that flexes on the ground. What it's called right now is a floor-tillered stave. And a floor-tillered stave is essentially one that you press it against the floor and you see if it bends. And you try to match the thickness, the bend. You look at that one, you look at that one, and you do the best you can to try to make the bow bend as evenly as possible before you put the string on it. So this is called a tillering string. Essentially, it's just some baling twine that I separated, and I put it back together with what they called, this is called a counter twist. It's the same way the Native Americans would make their bowstrings, but they would use things like plant roots and other things like that. And at the end of it is a plated loop. And the plated loop is essentially a loop where it's plated back together and braided, so no matter how hard you pull on it, it's never going to break. This is just for tillering, getting the bow strung up, taking this string to the next one, it gets awfully close to the belt sander and the tools that I work with. So as this one gets beat up, you just toss it away. Once the bow is done and I know its final length of string, I'll go ahead and order a new one. So we're going to go ahead and pop this string on here. This is the first time I have made a bow in almost 10 years. I've been out for a long time. And so what you see here is string grooves. That is done with a Dremel tool and a bit that just kind of grinds away the wood. Just like that. I'm going to slide this on. And we're going to cross our fingers. Now, I'm not going to pull it back. Meaning, I'm not going to just put the string on and draw it back. That's not how this works. Now, the string needs to be shorter than the bow, right? Because the bow needs to bend in order for it to reach. And the way that you figure that out is you get to the back of the bowstring right here, the groove, and you put 4 fingers on, and then you fold the string over. That's how long the string needs to be right there. Okay? That's how long it needs to be. So what I'm going to do here is actually just make myself a slip knot. I'm going to make a slip knot because, again, this is a tillering string and it's going to be used for many different bows. And the slip knot just goes right here, like so. This is going to be a little scary. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a little scared. And the reason I'm scared for this one is because, well, my wood selection wasn't all that great on this particular piece. It had nothing to do with the grain of the wood, but when they band these timbers together on the truck, they use these metal bands that dig into the wood. And there was a very deep gouge right inside the limb right here. And I tried my best to sand it away. Now, visually, I can't see it anymore. It's gone. I took it away on the belt sander. But in my mind, I know it's still there. And if it's going to break, that's where it's going to break. I don't have all the tools that I need for making bow and arrows here, like a full shop. I technically would have used a joiner to pass the edge of the wood, the side of the wood right here along the joiner, and then it would have cleaned that off. But unfortunately, that defect, I don't have a joiner, that defect ended up in the bow. So what we're going to do is wish me luck.
Should I move?
No.
Okay. I don't want to.
I got faith it's going to make it getting strung up.
Okay.
Now there's two ways to string a bow, a longbow. There's one, you can just press your knee on it and bend the limbs and then slide the string into the notch. That's one way you can do it. The other way is the step through method. That's where you step through the string and you make a cross brace like that. Same thing, you would just bend it into place. And the third is with a bow stringer. Now I don't have a bow stringer, so I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do, because I noticed the string is just slightly too long, is I am going to twist the string down just a bit, because I want to make sure I see the true brace height of this. So I'm just going to twist it in the same direction that I twisted the string to begin with. That's going to shorten it up just a little bit. Then put that back on there, get my slip knot back inside of the end, and we're going to go for it. Now this is just all measurements. One limb might be more wacky than the other. All right, we got it strung, but the brace height's too low. You see that? That's the brace height, the distance there. I'm never going to get a true idea on how it's bending unless I fix that. So what I'm going to do is just, instead of twisting it, I'll make this slip knot a little bit smaller, and I'll cut the excess off of here. Again, I'm a little bit out of practice. It's been a while since I've done this. Back in the wood shop that I had, I was able to really, I had everything fine-tuned. There were tiller and strings around, different length tiller and strings, and everything was like in its place. Me organized, right? Yeah. Uh-huh. All right. Let's do this. I shortened up the slip knot. Again, I don't complete the loop on the one end until, well, never. It's just a tiller and string. Here we go. Oh gosh, I might have made it too short. Whoo! Whoo! If it snaps, it snaps. Ooh. Now that brace height's too high. Too much. We need a fist and a thumb. But you can see this side of the bow is bending more than this side of the bow. So what I'm going to do is adjust this brace height one last time, and then I'm going to fix the bend in the bow. Whew! That actually was exhilarating. Here's the thing. You never want to pull the bow back right away when you first string it up, because the wood needs to be trained to bend over and over and over in the right direction. It's kind of like, think it's about somebody who hasn't done exercise in a long time, and they decide they're going to go and stretch really far, like past their means. It's the same idea here. This wood needs to stretch itself into its full position, because the idea is I'm going to pull this string and those limbs are going to bend even further than they already were. I'm going to pull this string and they're going to bend all the way back. And we want to do it slowly. It's called tillering and training the wood to bend in the right direction. So my brace height should now be just about spot on. All right, perfect. Good brace height. Let me cut this excess string off.
you know how much to do that? Just because you're an expert?
I guess so.
Wow.
All right, so we have a bow. And I couldn't call it a bow yet. It's not a bow yet. When we look at this thing from a distance, I need you guys to see that this limb bends more than this limb.
Yep.
This is a stiff limb. Now, there are other things to look out for, like hinges and stiff spots. A hinge is almost exactly the way it sounds, like on a door. You're looking for an area that bends too much in one spot. And then a stiff spot is essentially an area that doesn't bend as much. And I can kind of see a stiff spot right out here. So the next step is to head over to the belt sander and start removing a little bit of wood with the string on before I go ahead and draw it back. Now that area, that defect I was talking about, I'm going to have to keep an eye on it. It's literally right in here. Now listen, you cannot do this with pine, you can't do it with oak, you can't do it with cherry. This is a single piece of wood. That's called a self bow, meaning it's built by itself. There are no other laminations, there's no rawhide, there's no sinew, there's nothing. It is completely one piece of wood relying on itself to become a bow. So that's why they call it a self bow. This is not a recurve. People get confused and they think a recurve. A recurve is where the tip of the bow goes the other way. Now there is a way to turn this into a recurve by boiling the tips and bending the wood backwards the other way, and you can make a recurve. But in our goal is just to make a functioning stick bow, self bow, long bow, whatever you want to call it, flat bow, primitive bow. So I'm going to go in here to the belt sander and let me know if I need to refresh or not on my thing. And we're going to start removing a little bit of wood here on the belt sander. This is the belt sander. And this is very crappy sanding paper from Harbor Freight. I picked up these tools to make this bow. I literally used a jigsaw, a table saw, a Dremel tool, and a belt sander to make it so far what I got, and baling twine. As far as materials go, I got less than $10 of materials wrapped up into this bow. I'm going to count the sandpaper as one of my cost incurred pieces. What's up, knucklehead? You cannot use redwood either. No. Hickory is the only, you need a wood that they call it interlocking. The grain is interlocking. And by using an interlocking grain, that allows you to use, to bend it and flex it. But I'm telling you, I've done so much prep research, all of the things that you need to do in order to determine what wood to use, and it's hickory. Hickory, that's it. That's all we're going to use. So, again, this limb's bending good. This limb needs some wood removed, and it's a little stiffer near the tip. So my plan is to avoid hitting the string, but I can remove it from the back of the wood here. So let's try our hand at some tillering. It's very important not to keep this on the sandpaper in one spot for too long, because it will heat up. And when it heats up, that will give you a false tiller. If you have a false tiller, essentially, you're not going to realize that all you did was warm the wood up and allowed it to flex a little bit more in that spot. And it's just going to go back to its original shape later on. So in my case, I'm going to pop the string off of here since I know I need to remove just a little bit more material. And when I want to take a lot of material off, I use the belly of the bow. The belly of the bow is the side that's facing the archer. So if I'm pulling this back, the side facing me is the belly, the side facing you is the back. I know it's kind of counterintuitive. That's not really, doesn't seem right, but it is correct. All right, so we said since we know what we're going to take off, let's just do it real quick. So we're focusing at the tip first. Focus at the tip. That's where the stiff spot was. Now that I think I got the stiff spot off, I'm going to sand the entire thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That was 10 passes. Now that I did 10 passes, I'm going to string it back up again and see if 10 passes was enough to straighten this out. Again, never keeping the blade in one spot for too long, or the sandpaper in one spot for too long. So string it up. This is where I'm going to train the wood. I can't just magically see it happen. I have to pull it back just a little bit. So I'm going to start drawing the bow very slightly. And this is the scary part, because if it blows up on you, then you got a problem. So I'm drawing it to about 12 inches. This is flexing the wood. And as I do that, I'm looking for changes in the limbs. I'm trying to see if this side actually fixed itself, or if I fixed it, or if I need to remove more. Now here's the thing. There is a thing called a tillering stick I could use. I could build it. It's basically a stick that looks like this. There's about 28 notches in it, 1 notch every inch going down, and then you put the bow on top of the tillering stick, you draw the string down and put it inside the notch, you stand back and you look at it. My eye is very, very well trained in this. I did this for 15 years. My bows were commissioned for Saturday Night Live. The Boy Scouts of America bought thousands and thousands of bows from me. In the Name of the King, which is a movie on big screen, CBS's Amazing Race. So and also just father and sons across the world used to buy my bows as unfinished products. So I have a very, very good eye, and I used to teach bow making classes in my wood shop back in the day. I would have people come out and take classes and learn how to make the bows. And I taught people like Ned Miller, who owns Crow's Head Archery right now, who also bought Custom King Archery. Him and his dad took a class on how to make bows, and now he's one of the biggest distributors of bow and arrow building equipment out there. Three Rivers Archery used to wholesale my stuff all the time. And let's see, who else? Medieval Collectibles. I used to do, if you go to that, medievalcollectibles.com, they used to be a huge thing. I copyrighted 2 bows, and it's the Prologue bow and the Ranger bow. So if you Google Prologue or Ranger bow, those are 2 designs that I copyrighted. I hold the copyright patent for that. Unfortunately, people are still using that artwork and style on their bows. And bows, B-O-W-S, bows, B-O, bows. So, it wasn't a small time operation, guys. I used to do this on a large scale, meaning we would get a purchase order for, 300 bows at a time. And then we'd fill retail small orders out at the same time. So as I'm flexing this wood in, I'm looking at both sides, the one I just worked on and the one that's previous, and I'm trying to look for anything I need to do. And I am noticing it is coming into line, but it's not there yet. So we're going to remove some more. What I do have to tell you is we had, in my commercial shop when we did this, we had jigs, and we had templates, and we had multiple tillering stations, and we had things that made the whole process easier. It wouldn't be piecemeal like I'm working on this one bow right now. We had massive three-phase dust collection systems. So this is what I call backyard bowyer right now. I'm being a backyard bowyer in my shop, just whittling down a piece of wood and turning it into something that can fling an arrow, fling a stick across. I mean, one of the most primitive weapons there are, a stick and a string, right? A stick and a string. That's all this is. And this is what fed the world back in the day. This and slings and spears. This is what fed the world, which is kind of amazing. Now, did you know that the medieval archer, yes, I'm saying the medieval archer from years ago, well, we know it's sturdy now, it just fell on the ground. The medieval archer was a fierce person. At the age of 12 years old, the young men had to start shooting a bow and arrow, and they kept increasing the draw weight on the bow. More and more and more and more. This is your typical American flat bow style. An English longbow is made out of yew wood, Y-E-W, yew wood, and it was a very thick profile, probably over an inch. They were drawing 150 pounds of pressure at a full 32 inches. Now, to understand how difficult that is, I don't even know. I don't even know how to explain it, but it's nearly impossible for any modern day archer to do that. Even a 75-pound draw weight on a compound bow doesn't compare to what the English archers did. There was a ship called, I don't remember the name of the ship, the Mary, the Queen Mary, the Rosemary, the something Mary, where they found some perfectly preserved English longbows that were completely covered in bear fat. That's what they used to preserve it, and they were transporting them across the oceans. And they were able to take the dimensions off of those bows, and they were able to reproduce the bows of old, the English longbow. This is not an English longbow. This is an American style longbow. And they were able to reproduce it and get draw weights of upwards of 150 to 170 pounds. Okay. The damage that they did on their bodies was intense. Their skeletal remains are already proven to be so worn down in the shoulders from how much massive strength they were pulling back. And why do you think they were pulling back such heavy bows? So go watch any medieval style movie and you're going to see them on castle walls shooting these longbows as far out there as possible. And it wasn't really for the distance, guys. It really wasn't. What it was is armor started to get so good. Armor was so good that they couldn't pierce it anymore. So the blacksmiths developed the Mary Rose. That's it. The blacksmiths developed the bodkin. The bodkin was a long, slender, pointy, armor-piercing bullet that would go on the front of your arrow. And it was so heavy, the bows could no longer launch these arrows. So over time, as armor upgraded, they upgraded the bodkins, the arrowheads, to reflect what they needed to do to get through chainmail or to get through the plate metal. Yeah, there's a lot of history in bow and arrow making, and that's the English, side of it. There's the American side of it, where Ishi, there's an Indian named Ishi who was the last known Indian in the United States that they captured him in the early 1900s, and they kind of just studied him. They learned his ways of shooting. He had a very peculiar way of shooting his bow and arrow, and it was like this, kind of flat and upside down, because he wasn't shooting at the enemies that were running after him. He was shooting rabbits, and he was shooting whatever he could to survive and eat. And that begs you, there was no longbows with the Native Americans. They would have thing called brush bows. And see this stiff handle? This is modernized. This isn't traditional right here. This is your 50s, your 40s, 50s, like lemonwood bow that they would have. The brush bow from the Native Americans, like Ishi, would shoot very short bows, almost as short as this, extremely short. And the wood would bend completely through and through. And the bow was never designed to be drawn all the way back, standing up, launching an arrow over a wall. It was designed to be small, so they could put it in their satchel and ride their horses, so they could string it on their back like this, and they could get through the woods without getting caught up on anything. Also, so they could use it in the thick brush. And most of the times, those Native American bows, you ever seen those tribal patterns on the back of the bows or in the back of anything? But they would put tribal patterns up and down the bow and arrow, or the bows. And that was because, think if you're a deer. You're a deer, I'm Ishi. And here I come. Let's try it with this one. Okay, that's hideous. Okay, you see this big white thing coming through the woods. You had to camouflage it. So a lot of times they would take snake skins and they would laminate them onto the back. The Native Americans were so smart. They realized when they actually got an animal down, they used every part of it. And one of the coolest things I find about the Native Americans is they were able to make such an amazing glue out of the rawhide from deer and buffalo. Yes, that's right. They would dry out the rawhide. They would take and scrape little shavings off of the rawhide, right? And that would create this powder. And they take that powder and they would boil it. And when they boiled it, it became an extremely strong glue. And what could they do with that glue? They could wait for the rawhide to draw completely. They could take the fur off of it, and they could laminate the back of a bow. Think about this. This piece of wood is just a piece of wood to me. And once I get this bending and shooting, and I let people have fun with it, I'll probably stick it in the corner of the garage and I'll never see it again. But the Native Americans would spend hours and hours crafting it because they didn't have a piece of lumber, store-bought hickory, sapwood hickory. They had to chase the growth ring down. They had to take the bark and imagine, I want you to imagine that a tree has all of these growth rings, right? So many growth rings on there, right? Here's your tree, here's your growth rings. On a piece of maple or a piece of wood that they were using, any other type of wood, you can use other types of wood, but not in the scenario that I'm doing. Once they violated the growth ring, meaning once they scraped the bark off, if their knife or their blade or their tool went below the growth ring, they violated it, they would have to chase a growth ring, meaning the length of their bow, this, consider it paper piece number 1, paper piece number 2, 3, 4. And if they went through paper piece number 1, they had to chase the growth ring all the way to number 2 very carefully and not go to number 3 or 4. You can do it as many times as you want, but a primitive made bow is all about chasing a growth ring. Here, I'm using an interlocking grain. I don't care if it's flat sawn, quarter sawn, rift sawn, doesn't matter. As long as my grain runs 90% the length of this bow, I'm good. I'm golden. All right? Now, my bows will get thrown in the corner and I'll forget about them. But the Native Americans, like Ishi, he used it every day so he could eat, so he could survive. And of course, they're going to take a beating. And of course, the wood is going to develop a memory and it's going to stay in a bent position. The one thing that I find the most fascinating about primitive bow and arrows is this. When they used glue and they were able to glue the rawhide on, there's something else they used that made a bow so well performing, it was beyond their years. They didn't even realize it. It's called sinew. Now, everybody has sinew in their body. The animals have sinew in your body. But I want you to think about this as an example. I'm 43 years old, right? It's getting a lot. I'm tight. I am very tight, and I cannot stretch as long as I used to. As far as I used to. So, taking pieces of sinew from an animal, using the rawhide from an animal, the rawhide glue from an animal, putting it and laminating it on the back of their bow and allowing it to cure. What happens when you don't stretch? It tightens up. They literally took the same concept of not stretching and introduced it into the bow. Not only did the sinew hold together the fibers of the bow for them, but when you take the string off of a bow that's been used every single day for 10 years, there's a thing called memory. I want you to look at this. This piece of wood is no longer straight anymore. There is a slight memory to that. And this is a virgin bow. I just made this. So every bow, every self bow will lose some of its performance over time because wood has a memory. Now, by applying the sinew to the bow, you've essentially allowed the sinew to bring your bow back to life. It's just phenomenal. They use animal parts. They use tree parts to make the strings. They use trees to make the bows. So this was my passion. For 15 years, I manufactured bows. And this is the first one I've made in about 10 years after an injury. So what my goal is in this video in the next couple minutes is to get it to the point where I can draw it back to a standard draw length. Now, an English archer had a long draw length. They wanted to draw it far. Bows were 7 foot tall, right? This is a 6 foot tall bow. And I did that on purpose because many people are going to be using it at the Eastern PA homesteading show coming up in July. So I want to make sure it's distributed. The weight is distributed. It's going to work. I'm going to test it out, make sure it doesn't snap. So far, so good. I'm drawing it to my chest. That's about 24 inches. I got about, I'm going to tell you, this is a little springier than I thought it was going to be. It is, I'd say right now, sitting around a 50-pound weight. We have to remove a little bit more off of here. When I started making bows back in the day, when I was a teenager, I'm looking for a knife. I did it the primitive way. I learned how to do this from a tree. That was my introduction to archery. I learned how to do it from the trees. I took what nature gave us. I took nothing and I turned it into something, which it's not nothing. I just took parts of nature and turned it into something else. I got sparks, Captain. It's sparking on me. And essentially all I'm doing right now is removing layers of this wood, very small amounts at a time. I don't want to overdo it. I want to use a rough grit. This is 36 grit sandpaper, so that's enough to remove a bunch of material. Once I move to the next phase of sanding, once the bow is functioning, I up the grit to 80, 120, 220, and so on and so forth. Now, there is a common thing. Now what I'm doing is I'm stretching the wood in rather than just yanking it right back. This wood is never bent. It has never been bent this far in its life. And now we can start seeing the true shape of the longbow. Now, it's very common for a lot of bowyers to manufacture their bow in such a way that the bottom limb is slightly stiffer than the top. And they do that because the center of the bow is here, right? But your hand goes there and the arrow shoots just above center. And so by allowing the lower limb to be slightly stiffer, okay, I'm feeling the spring. We're going a little bit further back this time, and I'm going to test the length on how far I'm going to go. This is a tape measure, and this is me holding the tape measure and pulling the string at the same time. That's 2 feet. That's only 2 feet. Woo! The tape measure snapped, and I thought it was the bow. Oh, that scared me for a second. Okay. This is a 32-inch piece of waste wood. I do not want to draw it to 32 inches. Although I have 100% confidence that this would make it 32 inches, I'm just not going to do it. What I'm going to do is mark myself 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. My natural draw length for when I was shooting, 27, 26, 25, 24. My natural draw length when I'm shooting is about 27 inches. I'm a short guy. Now, everybody's different. Traditional archery is different than most. Reason being is, God, that's really good. It's getting really good. Where's your anchor point? An anchor point is where you draw and let go. I can guarantee you that Ishi, or think about this, and this is just boggles my mind that we're so commercialized. Like, we got TV and we see this stuff on TV, but to imagine that this really happened. There was an Indian on a bow somewhere in the plains of, which wasn't America at that time, on a horse with a short little bow, on a horse, riding up next to a buffalo and sinking an arrow right down into that buffalo. That really happened. That really happened. So his draw length was to his rib cage because he wasn't aiming. It was instinct. He would ride up next to the buffalo and he would pull it to his ribs, and that bow had to have been really stout, right? And it had to be a very, very sharp obsidian piece of rock. They would flake it away. It's called flint knapping, and they would flake this rock away and make these sharp arrowheads out of rocks. So pretty amazing. But to think that that actually happened. So Native Americans, that type of draw length would be very short. My style of shooting is not... That's not me. I'm not prim and proper when it comes time to shooting. For me, I used to be able to shoot an apple that I tossed. I could take an apple, I could toss it, and I could shoot it. And I'm an instinct type shooter, meaning I don't have a reference point on the bow. I know where my equipment's shooting. I know how I have a floating anchor point. Depending on what I'm doing, I have a floating anchor. Now, if I was in the Olympics, I would have to draw it to the corner of my mouth. I would have to look down, yeah, blah, blah. I don't do any of that. It's instinct. Now, does that make me a great archer? Probably not. Probably not a great archer. Can I hit a 9-inch pie plate from 10 yards? I used to be able to. I was pretty good, but it was my living. It was my job, right? It was my job. So as I talk and I stretch, let's see what happens here. If I can get it to my 24-inch draw length. This is not an arrow. 24. All right, let's go a little further. If you guys hear a snap, then you know it's breaking. 25. We are at 25 inches. Let's go 26. 26. 26 inches. 27. I got it to my draw length. I have now brought this bow to my personal draw length. I will safety test this bow all the way to 32 inches. I will draw this bow back all the way to 32 multiple times before we go to the event coming up. And guys, this is just done on basic tools in my shop. I made a 5/8 inch thickness right here. This is a 7-inch handle. 7-inch handle, does not bend. 5/8 of an inch here. 3/8 of an inch here. I have a 14-inch tip taper, and that would be the profile looking at you. 1/2 inch to start here. 14 inches down, it tapers out to the width of the bow, which is about 1.5 inches. That's about 1.5 inches. Once I'm comfortable that this bow is actually going to shoot an arrow over and over and over again, then I'm going to shape the handle. I'm going to cut and shape the handle. Now, this way, what my plan is, I do not want to have to make multiple bows and multiple draw weights for lefties and righties. I'm not going to do it. I am not going to do it. So what my plan is to make one bow with a universal arrow rest, meaning this bow is going to have an arrow rest on this side and this side. And it's going to be a higher draw weight. So my idea is for the Eastern PA Homesteading Festival that's coming up, I am going to make 2 adult bows because I'm going to have 2 lanes. And each archer will have the choice, a heavier bow or a lighter bow, right? And the heavier bow isn't going to be ridiculously heavy. My plan is to get its draw weight around 40 pounds, right? And then the lighter draw weight will be around 30 pounds. And then there'll be 2 junior bows I want to make with an ambidextrous arrow rest left and right. And those junior bows will be roughly 15 to 20 pounds in draw weight. And they'll get a chance to shoot at arrows or at balloons. And if they pop the balloons, we're going to give them a prize. And the prize is most likely going to be a goat stuffy. Who's ready to fling an arrow through this? I mean, it's not going to shoot that great because right now the string lines up in the center of the bow, right? You see this? The string lines up in the center. Now, how does that work? Think about this. Take a second, and I want you to use your noggin. And this is a bonus question for anybody out there. If the string lines up in the center of the bow like so, and you draw the bow back, and the arrow, obviously I don't want to cut my arrow rest. If I cut the middle of this all the way out to accommodate the thickness of an arrow, all the way to the middle, how it's not possible. It's not possible. How does the arrow go around this handle? You never cut the arrow rest past the center, so you're always going to have the string slightly offset. How do you make the arrow not shoot to the left? How do you make the arrow not shoot to the left? Does anybody know that answer? Because this is a very difficult one. This is an advanced question for you guys. Advanced question. I'm waiting. I'm just going to help you out. It's called the Archer's Paradox. The Archer's Paradox is essentially that, and this doesn't seem real. It doesn't seem real. It doesn't seem like it is actually what is happening, but it's true. It really does happen. When you buy a bow and the draw weight is 50 pounds, that means when you draw this back, you have 50 pounds of resistance right here. It's like holding 50-pound weight, and that is at your fingertips, right? 50 pounds right there. And when you release that string, you're exerting 50 pounds of force into the back of an arrow that is barely the size of a pencil, okay? Think about that. Think about taking a pencil and dropping a 50-pound weight on the back of it. You're going to snap it, right? Okay, here's where the Archer's Paradox come in. Arrow making is a completely other artwork. It is a craft that you have to understand and learn. Because When you draw this bow back, that arrow is going to do this. Watch. It's going to bend. It is not going to stay straight. I really wish I had an arrow with me right now. But here's what's going to happen. As you draw this bow back and you go to release it, it's called the archer's paradox. That arrow is going to bend like this to the side. And I kid you not, when you draw this back and the arrow is cockeyed, facing to the left, you would think it would go to the left. Now, it would go to the left if you were shooting a 2x4 instead of an arrow, because there's a science behind the arrows that are built. If you draw this back and the arrow's too stiff, no matter how or where your arrow rest is at, if your arrow's too stiff, it's going to shoot to the left. No matter what, it's going to shoot to the left. But if you build your arrow properly, it's called the archer's paradox. And you draw it back and it's cockeyed, even though you're drawing it straight, and you put the pressure on the back of that, watch what happens. The arrow will bend around the bow like this, and it will kick the tail feathers out this way, and it will straighten up right along the backside of the bow and end up into your target. Now, it's called the archer's paradox for a reason, because yes, it's paradoxal. Listen, it's like science and necessity to survive all came together. To think that the Native Americans knew how to come up with this and how to do this it boggles my mind. Now, an English warbow wouldn't have been the same concept. An English warbow didn't rely so much on accuracy. Yeah, granted, they needed to understand like where it was going to land as far as distance, but they were shooting into a mass of people coming at them, right? The real art in traditional archery is the manufacturing of your equipment, right? And so it's very difficult to be very good at traditional archery because of all of these things. Now, let's just say you have the perfect setup. You've got your 50-pound bow and you've got arrows that are spined. That's what they call it, the spine weight. They actually take arrows and they put it on this thing that holds it, and they hang a weight on it, and this gauge goes up, and it'll tell you this arrow is spined for a 50-pound bow. So nowadays, it's super easy to figure out what equipment is perfect for your bow, what arrows are good, what bows match together, right? But a lot of times, you're backyard shooting, you grab any bow and any arrows, which is what I'm going to do. Nothing's going to match. That's part of the gimmick. It is still a game of skill, but I'm not going to give an archer on the line a 50-pound bow with arrows that are spined 50 pounds. Because first off, I'm not investing the money in all of that kind of stuff. I'm not a bow and arrow manufacturer anymore. I'm a backyard garage bow maker right now, and all I want to do is get something that flings some arrows down the way. I'm not going to make it ridiculously impossible for them. If they use their instincts, they're going to be able to hit the balloon. And what you do with 3 shots is you take your first shot and you realize where it goes. Take your second shot and adjust. And then your third shot should be right on point, right? And it's just understanding and learning your equipment. So we're going to see how quickly people can adjust to the bow and arrows I'm going to give them. Now, I believe in the corner of my garage somewhere, I can find an arrow. I thought I saw one. I'm going to go find it. We're going to shoot an arrow. And it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good, I promise you. It's going to go all over the place. Well, hot dang. I did find one. Okay. I did find one. In fact, I found 2. Now, these aren't the type of arrows that I manufactured. This is a cedar shaft, right? This is a Walmart arrow. This is a cedar shaft. These are plastic feathers, plastic knock, and a standard crimp-on point right here. Crimp-on. Very cheap, very basic. That's all we're going to be using, because I guarantee you people are going to be breaking my bows and arrows. Oh, no. I don't think I can shoot it. I just touched it and the knock broke off. Oh, maybe we can fix that. Let's quickly fix that and then try to shoot this. I can't end this video without actually shooting. I have to shoot something. I'll shoot this 2x4 if I need to. I'm going to use a Dremel tool and I'm going to try to fix this. The bow is made out of hickory. Okay, we're going to notch it out ourselves with a new notch. Do not try this at home, because what I'm doing is going to be very dangerous, because I'm violating the rules here. It's not safe, because essentially I've just grinded away the plastic, which was the strength of this arrow, and I'm going to attempt to put the, I might as well, yeah, well, I'm going to attempt to put the string in there and fire this. Oh man. All right, here you guys go. Moment of truth. Are we ready? What are we shooting at? All right, we're going to shoot at this piece of styrofoam right here. And I'm going to be over there, slightly out of the way. And we're going to give it a crack. We're going to give it a go. Now, I'm only shooting it from like 6 feet or so. 8 feet. I'm 8 feet away. And again, since I have not even started an arrow rest, my arrow is cockeyed way off to the side. So, instinctual type shooting. Here we go. You ready? 3, 2, 1. It shoots! It functions! Now I only drew it back a couple, maybe 22 inches. I didn't draw it all the way back, but look at that. Right down the middle. I hit it. Let's give it another shot because that was fun. And with no arrow rest whatsoever, with a very horrible setup, I am going to attempt to challenge myself with a circle. Yes, a little teeny circle. I'm going to circle the arrow hole that I just made. Ain't no way it's going in there. But we're going to give it a shot. I missed way to the left. I missed way to the left. Told you. I told you. Now, once I get the arrow rest in there, the archer's paradox is going to be so much better. There's also the fact of the matter is you have to make sure that you have the proper feather out. There's one of these feathers called the cock feather. Cock-a-doodle-doo! Right? 2 of these feathers. Watch this. Watch this. Imagine this is the string. Imagine this is me knocking the string, knocking it onto the string. And imagine this is the bow right here. The arrow needs to pass across the bow handle like so. Do you see how both of those feathers are pretty much set up in a way that they have the least amount of friction on the bow? But if I were to string it the other way, this way, now you have the feather hitting the side of the bow and deflecting it to the left. So you have to use the proper alignment when you're shooting. There's so many little things that you have to figure out. So guys, my next step on this project, since I know one bow is done, I'm going to feel really good if I could at least carve the handle out, get the handle all situated and comfortable and functional, and I have one bow complete. The next 3 bows I make, I'm probably going to do production style. So I'm going to cut all of the pieces at once. I'm going to do every step to each bow as a manufacturing process. So when I do the string grooves, I'm going to do them on all of them. When I do the blanks cutting on the table saw, I'm going to do it all. I only have to plug in the machine once, only have to break it down once, set up another machine, you know. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that little bit of bow and arrow making session. I live streamed myself earlier cutting this up. It was part of the Angel Watch. So if you missed that, maybe I can clip it out later on, but it's just a little teeny person in the side of the screen making it. So we good? We all good? Thanks for tuning in, guys. Thank you so much for all the positive comments and the thumbs up. You guys are awesome. Go back to Angel Watching, and I'll see you later. Okay? Bye-bye.